Have you ever stopped to think about what it means for a man to walk through life alone, not because he was left behind, but because he chose to do so on purpose? In a world that constantly tells us that happiness lies in relationships, that feeling complete comes from being with someone, and that being alone is bad or should be avoided, there exists a different kind of man. This is the type of man who doesn't see being alone as a punishment, but as a refuge. He doesn't wander around waiting for someone to show up and give meaning to his life. He is at peace with himself. In a time when many people think that being alone is a sign of a problem, he demonstrates that it can be a sign of strength. While some seek acceptance, he seeks to master his thoughts and control his emotions. Looking through history, we can see that many of the greatest thinkers, warriors, and sages like Marcus Aurelius, Seneca, and Epictetus chose silence over chaos, the company of themselves rather than the crowds. And it wasn't out of sadness, but wisdom. They understood what many people today forget, that true freedom begins when you can stand on your own 2 feet, and that genuine peace doesn't come from others, but from within. So no, this isn't about rejecting love or saying that relationships don't matter. It's not a speech against being with someone. It's an invitation to learn how to support yourself before depending on another person. To build a solid foundation within yourself that doesn't crumble with losses, rejections, or moments of solitude. If you've ever felt strange for preferring your own company, if you've questioned whether walking alone means missing out on something important, or if you simply want to understand the power that exists in silence, stay with me. Because today we're going to talk about 7 important truths about the man who chooses to walk the path alone and why this guy can be stronger, freer, and more at peace than the world imagines. First, he transforms solitude into strength. Many people are terrified of being alone. They see solitude as something bad, something to escape from or hide from. They fill their schedules with meetups, their ears with noise, and their lives with people. And it's not always about wanting genuine connection, but rather about fearing the confrontation with silence. But the man who walks alone by choice is different. He not only endures being alone, he enjoys it. He doesn't feel restless in silence. He thrives in it, because he has understood what many have forgotten. Being alone isn't a lack of something. It's being filled with what truly matters. When he's alone, he doesn't need to pretend, please, or show anything to anyone. It's just him with himself, without masks, without the theatrics. And that frightens a lot of people, because deep down, they fear what they might find when they're alone with their own thoughts. They prefer to occupy themselves to avoid facing the tough questions. Who am I when no one is watching? What do I truly believe? What really matters to me? This man, however, confronts these questions head-on. He goes into silence and, instead of getting lost, he finds himself. Instead of becoming weak, he grows stronger. Marcus Aurelius, who was an emperor and one of the great names of Stoicism, wrote something powerful. There is no place more tranquil and secure than within one's own soul. This isn't just a pretty phrase, it's advice. In a world full of noise and distractions, those who learn to retreat into themselves become practically unshakable. While many distract themselves with social media, compliments, and gossip, this man is organizing his thoughts, seeking real meaning, and training his mind as if it were a sword. And here's an important detail. True solitude isn't being physically distant from others. It's being mentally present with oneself. You can be alone in an isolated place and still be trapped in the noise of your phone, or you can be in the midst of a crowd and feel a profound peace inside. The man who accepts being alone doesn't need to disappear from the world. He simply decides to disconnect from what no longer serves him. He isn't afraid to let go of certain things because he knows what he's gaining. Time to think, clarity in ideas, understanding of who he is, and what truly holds value. This clarity becomes his direction. He doesn't live in pursuit of others. He doesn't drown in distractions. He doesn't jump into any relationship just to avoid being alone. Instead, he uses his time alone as a warrior uses his weapon with focus and care. He meditates, he reads, he writes, he trains. He builds an internal world so strong and rich that no chaos from the outside can topple him. And then comes the paradox. The man who feels best alone is the one who is most prepared for the world because he has faced his own fears. He has overcome boredom, insecurity, and fear, not by running away, but by confronting them head-on. So, while others flee from silence, he runs toward it, because that's where he finds his advantage, his wisdom, his peace. Being alone isn't solitude in the sad sense of the word. It's a sacred moment, It's where the man leaves behind the expectations of others and becomes who he really is. And when he returns from this inner dive, he doesn't come back fragile. He comes back focused. He comes back strong. Second, he learns to live on his own. There is a quiet strength in a man who doesn't depend on anyone. It's not because he's closed off, cold, or emotionless, but because he has learned, over time and through life's tumbles, to trust only himself. In a world filled with emotional, financial, and digital dependencies, the man who lives alone, without a partner, is often misunderstood. People say he is lonely, incomplete. They think, what must be missing in him? But perhaps that isn't even the right question. Instead of asking why he's alone, maybe we should consider what he has gained from this choice. Living on his own isn't just about knowing how to do laundry or make his own meals. It's about taking the reins of his own life. It's looking in the mirror and knowing, everything depends on me. Learning to handle money properly. When there's no one to offer comfort or support, he becomes his own safe harbor. When no one reminds him of the day-to-day tasks, he becomes more attentive, focused, responsible, and firm. At first, it might feel heavy. There's no one to cover for him, no backup plan. There's no, you can do this for me. But over time, this weight transforms into skill. Fixing a leak, planning meals, managing his own career. Responsibilities cease to be a headache and become a source of pride because no one is going to show up to solve things for him. And when he realizes this, he stops waiting. He starts acting. This isn't just about surviving. It's about knowing how to live well. The old Seneca once said, "He who is content with little is the richest," because happiness isn't found in what you have, but in being sufficient unto oneself. This statement sums it all up. A man who learns to be comfortable in his own company, who doesn't need applause, who finds peace within himself that is true wealth. Not because he has everything, but because he doesn't feel the lack of anything. How many people die from the fear of being alone? They chase after any relationship just to avoid facing the silence. They spend hours on their phones, fleeing from their own thoughts. But the man who lives alone doesn't run from the silence. He confronts it head-on and learns to listen to what most people fear, their own conscience. He learns to take care of himself. He becomes the foundation of his own life. He doesn't become emotionally unstable or lost in his finances. He stands firm in the only person he knows he can trust, himself. And the most curious thing is this: the man who needs nothing is precisely the one who has the most to give, because he offers from a place of strength, not need. He enters a relationship not to fill a void, but because he is whole and ready to contribute. Living independently isn't about isolating oneself. It's not about being cold. It's about having a solid base. And when a man understands this, he becomes truly strong. He may walk alone, but he never walks weak. Third, he tastes true freedom. These days everyone talks about being free, but almost no one truly lives it. They claim to be free, but are trapped in debt. They swear they are independent, yet their moods are affected by their partner. They say they make their own decisions, but they always consider what others might think. Freedom isn't doing whatever you please. It's not being tied down neither by situations, other people, nor by one's own impulses. And that's what the man who walks alone understands better than anyone. Because when he chooses to be alone, when he frees himself from emotional burdens and financial entanglements, he begins to feel something rare in today's world: true, clean, unfiltered freedom. He doesn't need to ask for permission to change direction. He doesn't have to explain why he quit his job, moved, or missed an event. He doesn't spend money just to look good. He doesn't abandon his plans just to please others. He wakes up every day knowing, the time is mine, the energy is mine, the choices are mine. That is true freedom. Epictetus, another Stoic thinker, once said, "To be rich is not to have much, but to want less." The man who lives alone begins to understand this perfectly, without the hidden pressure of dating costs, expensive dinners, gifts, trips, or social commitments. He finds freedom not just with money, but primarily in his mind, because he doesn't try to compete with anyone. He doesn't live by a checklist of rules that he didn't even create. He doesn't believe that success means getting married by 30, owning a house by 35, and posting happy pictures on Sundays. None of that. He decides what success means for him, and that scares many people. Because deep down, most don't want freedom. They want security, even if it's just an appearance. But this man prefers the risk of walking his own path to the comfort of living chained. He understands that being free sometimes means walking alone, and he also knows that no one is coming to pull him out of a hole, and it's precisely this that makes him so strong. He doesn't abandon his dreams for acceptance. He doesn't diminish himself to fit into someone else's life. He doesn't carry the emotional highs and lows of a partner who still doesn't know themselves. He guards his time like a warrior protects a castle, because he understands that time is the only thing that once gone doesn't return. And it's in that calm, quiet, sober space that he builds. He takes care of his money. He cares for his health. He dedicates himself to what he loves to do. He rises brick by brick to create the life he wants to live without excuses, without haste, in his own way. Some may think this is selfish, but that happens because they don't understand that true freedom isn't about throwing tantrums. It's about taking responsibility. It's not about running away from commitment. It's about choosing not to be tied down to what goes against who you truly are. This kind of freedom doesn't arise from anger, but from strength, clarity, and the constant decision to remain true to oneself, even when everything around tries to pull you in different directions. While many are trapped by invisible societal pressures, this man moves forward lightly, focused, and calm, not because he has nothing to lose, but because he has already decided what truly matters and set aside what doesn't make a difference. This is the value of learning to walk alone. This is what it means to be truly free. Fourth, he cultivates a more genuine sense of life. Most people are lost. They don't live with direction. They just go along, pushed by the routine of everyday life, by others' pressures, or by the false promises of success sold around. They wake up, work, scroll on their phones, sleep, and call this life. They chase after relationships, parties, promotions, and shopping not because it fulfills them, but because it helps them forget the emptiness of not knowing why they are here. But the man who walks alone cannot escape this question. He doesn't have constant noise to distract him. He doesn't have someone by his side to hide the pain that comes from within. And it's in this silence, this solitude, that he confronts the most difficult and powerful question anyone can ask. What am I doing here? Unlike most, he doesn't dodge the issue. He understands that without a partner, without constant compliments, without distractions, life becomes a mirror. It reflects everything he is and everything he is not. It brings to the surface his weaknesses, forgotten dreams, and untapped talents. And even if it hurts at first, this is where the meaning of life is born. Because when there's no one else around, it's just him and what he chooses to do with his time, energy, and the days he has. The Stoic Epictetus once said, "First, tell yourself who you want to be, and then do what you need to do." This isn't just philosophical talk. It's a practical way to live with intention. The man who feels good in his own company takes this seriously. He doesn't wait for the world to tell him who he should be. He chooses. He defines what honor, strength, balance, creativity, or peace means in his own way. And every day, he takes a step toward becoming that person. This is the difference between merely existing and transforming. While others get lost in empty relationships or try to fill their time with endless conversations, he dives inward. He thinks, he writes, he reads, he takes care of his body with determination. He sharpens his mind like a tool. He dedicates himself to something that goes beyond his own ego, deeper than fleeting feelings, and more enduring than any quick pleasure. He doesn't need another person to give his life meaning, because he has already put in the effort to create that meaning on his own. Having a purpose isn't something we find out there. It's something we build with our own hands. And solitude provides the materials: time, focus, calm, silence, the space to hear one's own voice in a world that constantly screams for you to be someone you're not. And here's the surprise. The man who strengthens himself alone becomes a reference for those who are lost. He inspires, not by talking too much, but by the way he lives. He doesn't live distracted. He isn't confused. He doesn't waste his energy on trivial things. He wakes up with a goal, and that's reflected in everything he does, in his work, health, routine, and relationships with others. Purpose becomes an armor in a world that loves chaos. He doesn't get swept away by trends, doesn't crumble when he's rejected, doesn't act on impulse. Because when a man has a mission, he becomes dangerously focused, and that focus becomes his greatest strength. While many still ask, "What should I do with my life?" he already knows. Because solitude didn't destroy him, it shaped him. And in the silence, he didn't find a void, he found a path. Fifth, he learns to control his emotions and finds peace within. There's a rare kind of strength in a man who doesn't let his feelings dictate everything he does. He feels, of course he's human, just like anyone else. But unlike most, he doesn't live at the mercy of his emotions. He doesn't let anger decide what he says. He doesn't let fear make choices for him. And he doesn't let loneliness push him toward the wrong people. Why? Because he learned, through experience, to take care of his own emotions, not by reading books or sitting in therapy, but in the silence of solitude. When a man lives on his own without a partner's comfort to soothe him, without someone always available to listen or distract him, he has to confront what's going on inside him. Emotions come in strong. There's no buffer, no one to say, "It will pass." When he's feeling down, it's just him and the whirlwind. And that's where he learns. He learns not to hide what he feels, but to face it head on. Not to run away, but to understand. He realizes that feelings are like the weather. They change, they pass, and they don't last forever. He notices anxiety creeping in, but he doesn't let it take over. He feels anger rising, but instead of exploding, he takes a deep breath. He senses sadness knocking at his door, but he doesn't drown in it. He navigates through it all with calm. Marcus Aurelius said, "You have power over your mind, not over what happens outside. Understand this and you will be strong." This isn't just a pretty phrase. For someone who walks alone, this becomes law, because when you take care of your inner world, the outside world no longer controls you. Let's be honest, most people aren't out of control because they're weak. It's because they never learn to handle what they feel. They depend on others to calm them, to feel better, to fix what's broken. And what happens when those people disappear? Everything collapses. But this man, he doesn't. He doesn't need anyone to hold his mood together. He doesn't freak out if someone takes a while to respond. He doesn't constantly seek attention to feel good. Instead, he's created his own ways to cope. Meditation, writing, reflecting on life, taking care of his body. He sits in silence and names what he's feeling without judgment. He doesn't feel ashamed of having emotions, but he never lets them control him. And that's where his peace lies, a strong, silent peace. He feels, yes, but he is the one in control. You can tell when you meet someone like this. He doesn't react with anger. He speaks calmly. He waits before responding. He smiles for no reason, because the peace he carries doesn't depend on the weather, the place, or the people around him. It comes from within. This kind of steadiness doesn't make him cold. It makes him trustworthy, because a man who doesn't break under pressure, who doesn't lash out when challenged, and who doesn't fall apart when rejected, is someone you can count on. In love, he doesn't lose himself. In tough times, he doesn't run away. And in silence, he doesn't disassemble. He learned to be his own support. And today, he brings that calm wherever he goes. Emotional control isn't about bottling everything up. It's knowing how to choose the best way to act. It's understanding that peace isn't a gift, it's something we build. The man who learned to calm the storm within himself is the kind of man that nothing from the outside can topple. He is like a tranquil lake amidst a world full of waves. And that's what it truly means to be a stoic man. Sixth, he becomes truly stoic, steadfast, even when everything changes. There exists a rare kind of man who walks through fire and doesn't bend, who sees the world around him become a mess, yet remains standing. Not because he doesn't feel, not because he's cold, but because he has built something inside himself that the outside world cannot understand or shake. Inner stability. This is the greatest gift that a man who chooses to walk alone receives. When you silence the voices of others, the relationships that served as shields or distractions, what remains is him, face to face with who he truly is. And in that silence, something ancient awakens, stoic firmness. Most people live reacting to bad news, to pressures, to disappointments, to compliments, and to criticism. They are tossed around by the emotions of others and the noise of the world. Their calm is fragile. Their confidence depends on others. Their decisions change all the time. But the man who has learned to be okay in his own company has done the work. He faced the silence that most avoid. He accepted the solitude that many call weakness. And he emerged from the other side stronger and more whole. Seneca once said, "A wise man is at peace with life, whatever it may be." And this man embodies that. He doesn't just say it. He shows it in practice. He doesn't revolt when things go wrong. He doesn't seek guarantees in a constantly changing world. He doesn't lose himself when he's sidelined, when plans fail, or when everything seems uncertain. Why? Because he stopped looking for peace in the outside world. Now he carries that peace with him. He isn't shaken by the latest trend. He isn't hurt by insults. He doesn't get overly excited by compliments nor shrink back from criticism. He moves like water, flexible when needed, firm when necessary, but never losing who he is. He learned through solitude that life around him changes all the time, but his mind, that he learned to take care of. His way of thinking, his attitudes, his values, those belong to him, and no one can take that away. So whether life hands him a crown or a cross, he remains the same, calm, focused, steadfast. He doesn't cling to what he might gain because he's committed to the journey. He doesn't latch onto people because he's guided by values. He doesn't live solely for pleasure but for a greater purpose. And when difficulties come, because they always do, he doesn't break. He stands firm. Because this man has done what few have the courage to attempt. He conquered himself. This is the final step on the Stoic path. Not to suppress what he feels, but to take control. Not to avoid connecting with others, but to not depend on anyone. Not to escape the struggle, but to grow with it. He becomes the calm center of the storm. In a world filled with noise and confusion, he is that steady presence, a flame that doesn't flicker in the wind. And when someone asks how he manages to stay so tranquil, so centered, so calm in the face of life's crises, he responds slowly, but with conviction. Because I have already faced the hardest fire, the one that burns from within, and I am no longer afraid. This is what it truly means to be a Stoic man. This is what a man who chooses solitude becomes. Not an incomplete man, not someone forgotten, but someone who has grown stronger in silence, firm, free, and whole. Seventh, he builds stronger and more authentic connections. Here's one of life's surprises. The man who feels comfortable being alone is often the one who can forge the most sincere and profound relationships. From a distance, people think he lives in isolation. They whisper, he doesn't know how to open up. They assume he's a closed-off guy, avoiding love, or worse, that no one can love him. But they are sorely mistaken. What they fail to see is that solitude has given him something few possess: clarity about who he is and who truly deserves to enter his life. The truth is that many people enter relationships out of fear. Fear of being alone, fear of not being loved, fear of silence. They jump from one relationship to another, trying to fill emotional voids, hoping that someone will make them feel whole. But the man who has grown comfortable in his own company doesn't merge with someone out of need. He connects by choice. He doesn't need anyone. It's precisely because of this that he knows how to love genuinely, without clinging, without hidden expectations. Because here's the thing, neediness ruins any relationship. Desperation drives away authenticity. But when a man is at peace with himself, every relationship becomes a want rather than a need. He doesn't chase after people. He doesn't insist where there's no sense. He doesn't force situations that have already shown they don't work. Why? Because he understands that being alone is not a punishment. It's home. He returns to that home calmly if what he finds doesn't align with his beliefs. Seneca once said, "Stay close to those who help you become better." And the man who embraces his own company lives this in every decision he makes, including the people he chooses to connect with. He names what he feels without judgment. He's not ashamed of his emotions, but he never lets them dominate his life. And from that comes his peace, simple yet firm. He feels, but he is in control. You can see this when you encounter him. He doesn't explode for no reason. He speaks calmly. He waits before responding. He smiles for no reason because his peace doesn't depend on the place, the weather, or the people around. It comes from within. This kind of control doesn't make him cold. It makes him trustworthy. Because a man who doesn't crumble under pressure, who doesn't lash out when tested, or fall apart when left behind, is someone you can count on. In a relationship, he doesn't lose himself. In difficult times, he doesn't run away. In silence, he doesn't collapse. He has built himself to weather the storms not by chance, but by choice. Because in solitude, he became the only person he could always rely on. And now, he carries this peace wherever he goes. Emotional control isn't about keeping everything inside. It's knowing how to respond without acting on impulse. It's realizing that peace is his, not a task for others to provide. The man who has learned to calm the chaos within himself is the one no external force can topple. He is the still lake in a world full of turbulent waves, and that is what it truly means to be a Stoic. Because of this, he possesses a different kind of strength. So no, the man who chooses to walk alone isn't truly alone. He has simply decided he won't accept just anything. Because when you build a life that is already good without having anyone by your side, you stop allowing just anyone to enter. And that's when solitude becomes the gateway to the most authentic connections one can have. Now it's clear. The guy who walks his path without a girlfriend, who prefers silence over chaos, depth over distractions, greater meaning over others' approval, he is not lost. He is not incomplete. He is not falling behind. He is growing. He has learned to be enough for himself, become his own support, his own protection, and knows how to guide his life. For him, solitude is not punishment. It's a place of calm where he thinks, organizes himself, and sees with clarity. He has created an emotional strength that doesn't waver with drama, arguments, or chaos around him. He has found true freedom in his pocket, in his mind, and in his heart. He has developed a purpose that shines brighter than any fleeting moment of pleasure. He has built more genuine relationships because he no longer needs them. He chooses based on the firmness he possesses within. And above all, he has become a steady calm amidst the confusion, someone guided by values, unafraid to live. This is not turning away from love. It's changing the way we view what it means to be truly strong. Because until a man can be at peace with himself in silence, in calm, in his own company, he will never truly know who he is. He will never feel what it means to be truly free. And he will never experience a whole love, only fragments, only out of need. So, if you have ever felt the weight of walking alone but have also discovered the lightness of being at peace with yourself, leave in the comments. I chose silence and found my strength. I want to see who's on this journey with clarity in mind and purpose in soul. And if this video touched you in any way, give it a like, subscribe to the channel, and share it with someone who needs to remember that being alone is not being lost. It is often the first step toward becoming whole. See you in the next one.